Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. First, let's talk about Kharkiv direction, where according to information we have, the Russians continue offensive operation, and currently there are very heavy clashes in the area of Liptsi. The Ukrainians managed to concentrate significant number of forces. We have updates about the redeployment of the 92nd Assault Brigade, of the 13th Brigade of Operational Assignment Khartia. We know that there is a 42nd Mechanized Brigade, so significant number of forces, and the concentration of forces more precisely allowed the Ukrainians to stabilize the line of combat contact and to slow down the Russian movements, because the Ukrainians understand if the Russians are able to take control over Liptsi and to force the Ukrainians to fall back, this will lead to the situation that the Russian artillery will be able to attack any position, any point inside of Kharkiv itself. Now let's move to Volchansk. We have a lot of updates. According to information we have, the Russians are about to start offensive operation in direction of the village by the name of Prilipka. For these purposes, the Russians are planning to cross Seversky Donetsk River and to establish the foothold on the Ukrainian side of the area. And I'll remind you that yesterday we were talking about the fire anomalies, and if you remember, one of the fire anomalies is taking place between Prilipka and Sinelnikovo, so in the area and the main supply road that Ukrainians could use to sending forces from Sinelnikovo to Prilipka. Now let's move to Volchansk. We have adjusted the map. As you can see today, we got the geolocation confirming the Russian presence in the northeastern part of Volchansk. On this video we can see the Russian soldiers who landed in the area were trying to take places, let's say commodities, houses and so on, trying to, let's say, deploy their forces, get positions and many other things. So we have adjusted the map. Furthermore, I'll remind you that during the previous few days we stopped receiving any updates exactly from this territory, from the, let's say, north central part and the southern part of Volchansk, so from this territory, which confirms that most likely this part of the town is already also under Russian control. And most likely today we're going to receive additional confirmation of that. Furthermore, sources reported that the Russians have crossed Volchansk River in the vicinity of the railway station and this area, and currently there are very heavy clashes. At least this information was also provided by different mappers, including the neutral mapper Syriac. So if we summarize everything, most likely this territory is already in the gray zone and there are very heavy clashes right now on this direction. Now let's move further to the south, to Kupiansk area. We have a lot of updates, and the most important updates are coming from the village by the name of Berestove. According to information we have, the Russians managed to improve their positions, and the Ukrainians have almost abandoned everything from this area and moved to this fortification belt. And the sources reported, different mappers, pro-Russian mappers reported that the Russians entered the village by the name of Mesazharivka, this one, and the Russians have already established, let's say, a strong foothold. They managed to dig in deeper, they managed to force the Ukrainians to fall back, and this is the perfect positions because further to the west there is the river Zhiribets, and it's would be very difficult for the Ukrainians to counterattack. So as soon after the Russians, let's say, captured the stronghold, the foothold in Mesazharivka, now they will try to improve their positions to the north and to the south. First of all, they will try to storm Stelmakhovka from the south. The Russians, as we understand, are about to finish the battle for Berestov, and this will allow them to storm the Stelmakhovka from the north as well. And of course, the Russians have always possibilities to attack the same village from the east. So I believe that we can start counting days before Stelmakhovka falls. Now let's move to the south. We're going to talk a lot about Chasiv. We have additional and very important updates from this, let's say, stronghold. As you can see, we have significant number of icons, and during the previous 24 hours the Russians conducted massive attacks, assault operations from different directions, from the east, from the south and from the north. The Ukrainian sources published the video of Russian attacks mainly from the eastern direction and from the southern direction. The Ukrainians haven't published any updates about the results of Russian attack from the north. When talking about Zelensky, today he published his report, and he stated that the Russian attacks were repelled. The Russians suffered significant losses. The Russians lost up to 20 or 21, let's say, armored vehicle as a result of Ukrainian strikes, as a result of FPV drone strikes, as a result of artillery strikes and many other things. So according to the Ukrainians, they managed to achieve significant results, and by the beginning of 19th of May there were no more Russians inside of the eastern Chasiv. So according to information we have, this attack started somewhere on let's say 17th of May in the evening or in the morning, and by the 19th, so after 2 days of clashes, the Russians were forced to fall back from the stronghold. So currently we can't tell you for sure whether it's true or not. Is this just a Zelensky speculation? positions, trying to reinforce the Ukrainian soldiers on the ground. We don't know for sure, but anyway, we got geolocations confirming that the Russians entered the eastern Chasiv Yar, and we don't have any geolocations confirming that Ukrainians counter-attacked or something like this. So the first attack took place as the previous attacks, let's say from the new cemetery through Popovo Forest. The Russians entered the area and they captured this building, and the Russians captured this building. They landed infantry, and after that the armored vehicles left Chasiv Yar. Few hours later, the Ukrainians published another video of the southern way attack. The Russians were moving through along the Stupki-Golubkovki forest and German forest. Also, the Russians were using significant number of armored vehicles, personnel carriers, tanks. The Ukrainians were bombing and attacking the Russians with artillery, with the FPV drones. But regarding the Ukrainian attempts to slow down the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense belt and to enter Chasiv Yar from the south. The Russians captured also a significant number of buildings. The Russians managed to dig deep inside of the eastern Chasiv Yar. As you can see, there is like a let's say a significant artillery preparation used to be before, and we have so the Russians managed to capture a lot of buildings, a lot of territories. Later, the Ukrainians brought there some FPV drone strikes. This is another Russian personal carrier. As you can see, the personal carrier entered almost the most central part of the eastern Chasiv Yar. The infantry landed and captured the building. So the clashes was very heavy. Once again, this attack also took place on the 17th of May, and once again Zelensky stated that everything was repelled, the Russians suffered losses, and the eastern Chasiv Yar was cleared. Once again, we don't have now any geolocations, any videos confirming this. The only thing we have is that the Russians captured the eastern Chasiv Yar. Anyway, because we have videos from the Russian side, because we have official statements from the high authorities from Ukraine, I believe it's better to keep the area as a gray zone. We need more updates, we need more geolocations, we need more information, because obviously the clashes for the eastern Chasiv Yar were very heavy, and of course the Ukrainians didn't count their losses, didn't count their forces. Let's say they were sending them wave by wave, trying to force the Russians to fall back, and obviously the Russians also didn't want to lose the foothold, and the Russians also were sending significant number of forces in this area. So let's wait. Anyway, today or maybe tomorrow the fog of war will disappear, and we will understand the exact situation in the eastern Chasiv Yar. Now let's move further. We have additional updates from other directions. The Krasnogorovka area, the Russians continue improving their positions and developing their foothold around the current positions. We have updates that the Russians improved their, let's say, positions on the eastern part of Krasnogorovka. So everything here was captured by the Russians as a result of offensive, as a result of clearing operation. The Russians are getting closer and closer to the main Ukrainian supply and support roads that goes in this part. The Russians also destroyed the bridge that Ukrainians were using for redeployment their forces and supplying and supporting, and now the Ukrainians were planning to use this bridge for evacuation and running away, but now they lost this possibility. Few artillery systems were destroyed behind Krasnogorovka as a result of counter-artillery duels. So everything is very poor for the Ukrainians. Obviously, they're about to lose the battle for this stronghold, and they're about to abandon their positions. We see that the Ukrainians are not showing any resistance. They are not interested in the town because they understand that they lost the most important and the valuable positions inside of the stronghold. So the battle for Krasnogorovka most likely is about to be finished. The Russians continue storming of Konstantinovka, and today the Cyrillic map Syriacs confirmed the control over this stronghold. Now the Russians are trying to storm this stronghold, and the distance between the Russian current positions and the main supply road that goes from Konstantinovka to Ugledar is less than 2.8 kilometers. So significant progress of the armed force of Russian Federation, and as soon as the Russians establish physical control over the road, we can start counting days of Konstantinovka and Ugledar as well. Urozhaina, the heavy clashes continues in the southern part, in the farms. We have a lot of videos confirming that most likely this part of Urozhaina still remains under Ukrainian control. On this video we can see the Ukrainians brought additional reinforcements. Maybe that was something like rotation. They landed infantry start taking their positions in these buildings, let's say, that located on top from the personnel carrier, but in a second the personnel carrier was destroyed. So the Ukrainians was very fast, and they just was very lucky that they managed to, let's say, abandon the armored vehicle very soon. But the Russians discovered, of course, this rotation, and after they discovered a significant number of Ukrainians, the Russians sent FPV drones, the Russians sent aviation helicopters to clear the territory from Ukrainians. On this video, we can see the Russian drone is coming to the area, and the Russian drone, as you can see these vehicles that the Ukrainians were using for rotation, and after that, the Russians start bombing and attacking this territory heavily. Most likely, every single Ukrainian who, let's say, arrived in the area lost their lives or something like this. So the battle for the southern Rozhanya continues. The Ukrainians also show, let's say, resistance. This is one of the towns that Ukrainians are not going to give up so easy, so they show resistance. Anyway, we see what is going to be next, because the Russians are going, they have some plans to finish the battle as soon as possible as well. Kherson direction, we have few videos of Ukrainian attacks with JDAM, with different types of weapon. On this video, we can see a very heavy explosion on the Russian positions in the vicinity of Holopristin. I'll remind you that recently the Russians managed to, let's say, restore control over the islands, and now the Ukrainians start attacking the Russian concentration of forces. So the battle for Kherson continues. During the previous night, the Ukrainians conducted another massive missile strike on Crimea. The sources reported about some explosions. We are waiting for additional details to understand what exactly is happening there. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.